Voyage of Philosophy 10. Schopenhauer versus Nietzsche. The meaning of suffering. For Arthur Schopenhauer, suffering was not an accidental misfortune of human life, but a core phenomenon that revealed the fundamental structure of existence itself. He did not view the world as a product of reason or rationality. Rather, he believed that, at the essence of the world, lies a blind and endless wille. This will is not a rational force, moving toward a specific purpose or perfection, but an impulse that constantly desires, craves, and seeks to sustain itself. Since humans are also expressions of this will, they are bound to want, pursue, and feel deficiency as long as they live. Consequently, human life essentially exists in a state of lack and tension rather than peace. We suffer from the absence of something until we obtain it, and after the struggle to acquire it, we feel a fleeting satisfaction, followed quickly by boredom and ennui, giving rise to new desires once again. In this regard, Schopenhauer famously compared the whole of life to a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. If we do not get what we want, we suffer once we get it. We are overwhelmed by emptiness and tedium. Thus, humans cannot dwell in true happiness for long. He believed that happiness is not an active or substantial state, but merely a negative state where suffering has temporarily ceased. To explain why humans are incessantly unhappy, he analyzed the structure of desire. Desire does not end the moment it is fulfilled. Instead, it gives birth to another desire. Once hunger is satisfied, one desires honor once honor is attained. One desires love once love is gained. One struggles not to lose it amidst anxiety. Humans are always casting themselves toward some future state, unable to remain in the present. In this structure of life, suffering becomes the norm rather than the exception. Schopenhauer, in particular, viewed the belief that humans freely and rationally control their lives as an illusion. While humans think they choose for themselves, they are actually driven by a will on a deeper level. He emphasized the limits of human freedom by stating, "A man can do what he wants, but he cannot want what he wants. Even the desires we harbor are already predetermined by the blind will of existence." Furthermore, he understood the whole of nature as an arena of struggle. Animals devour one another, and humans likewise live amidst competition and conflict. Life is sustained by sacrificing other lives, and individuals fight constantly to survive. Therefore, the world is not a harmonious order, but a field of suffering where desires clash. Schopenhauer saw the selfishness and violence of human society as expressions of this will. He remained skeptical of the optimistic view that humans are rational beings, and believed that civilization and progress could never eliminate the root of human suffering. On the contrary, he argued that as civilization advances, humans are placed within more complex desires and comparisons, experiencing new forms of unhappiness. However, Schopenhauer was not a philosopher who spoke only of despair. He sought several paths to escape suffering. The first was ascetic contemplation. Through art, humans can temporarily forget individual desires and enter a state of pure perception. He regarded music in particular as the highest form of art, because it directly expresses the will, the essence of the world. When immersed in beautiful music or works of art, a human is no longer a desiring being, but a perceiving being, temporarily liberated from suffering. Yet, this is only a transitory salvation, not a fundamental solution. The more fundamental path is the negation of the will. Schopenhauer argued that instead of infinitely affirming their desires, humans should restrain and deny them. He regarded asceticism and compassion as vital virtues. Compassion, in particular, was the central concept of his ethics. A human begins to break free from the selfish will only when they feel the suffering of others as their own. He believed compassion to be the foundation of all morality. This does not stem from mere pity, but from the insight that all existence shares the same source of suffering. To harm another is ultimately to torment, another expression of the same will, and the moment one understands the suffering of others, one gains the possibility of transcending self-centered desire. These ideas of Schopenhauer are frequently compared to Buddhism. He took a deep interest in Buddhism because it views human life as suffering, identifies desire as the cause of suffering, and emphasizes asceticism and the extinction of desire. Indeed, he acknowledged being greatly influenced by Indian philosophy and Buddhist texts. However, rather than speaking of complete liberation or positive salvation, his philosophy is characterized by a firm gaze at the tragic nature of the world. Until the very end, he viewed human existence as fundamentally imperfect and deficient, and he criticized optimism as an attitude that fails to see reality. Schopenhauer's philosophy of suffering exerted an immense influence on later philosophy and literature. Friedrich Nietzsche was strongly influenced by Schopenhauer in his youth, and Richard Wagner was also deeply captivated by his philosophy. His inquiries also reached into existentialism, psychoanalysis, and modern pessimistic philosophy. Questions such as why humans feel constant anxiety and lack, why desire breeds new desire even after fulfillment, and why civilization cannot make humans completely happy, remain valid today. Schopenhauer did not see human suffering simply as a failure or defect to be removed, but as a fundamental key to understanding existence itself. His philosophy stares coldly at the dark side of life, yet it leaves a profound philosophical resonance, exploring the possibility that humans can, even briefly, transcend the chains of suffering through compassion, asceticism, and aesthetic experience. For Friedrich Nietzsche, suffering was not merely a misfortune to be removed, or a defect of life, but a primal force that deepens human existence and allows for the creation of new values. He believed that Western philosophy and the Christian tradition had long understood suffering as something negative and sinful. While many people set safety, peace, comfort, and happiness as the ultimate goals of life, Nietzsche criticized this attitude, arguing that it weakens humanity and causes the vital force of life to decay. He believed that the moments when humans truly grow and transcend themselves occur, not in comfort, but amidst trials, conflicts, wounds, and suffering. At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is the demand to affirm life as it is, which includes not only the beauty of life, but also its cruelty, destruction, loss, and despair. He viewed the dream of a life without suffering as an unrealistic illusion, believing instead that the power to endure suffering and transform it into the material for self-formation is what makes a human great. Nietzsche paid particular attention to how humans interpret suffering. He argued that humans do not suffer simply because of pain itself, but rather despair when they lose the meaning of that suffering. While humans find it difficult to endure meaningless pain, they can withstand suffering endowed with purpose and meaning with incredible strength. He emphasized the importance of meaning in human existence by stating, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." Therefore, the problem is not the existence of suffering itself, but the fact that humans feel it is meaningless. Nietzsche criticized Christianity for interpreting human suffering through the lens of sin and atonement, thereby directing life toward negation. He believed that Christian morality turned weakness, obedience, and self-sacrifice into virtues, suppressing the strong instincts and vitality of humans. In particular, he criticized the attitude of justifying suffering as a reward in a transcendent world instead of enduring it. He argued that hoping for an afterlife instead of reality prevents humans from fully affirming the present life. For Nietzsche, life is essentially a process of struggle and tension. He explained the deepest essence of life through the concept of the will, to power Wille zur Macht. This is not merely a political desire for dominance, but a primal force of life, seeking to expand, overcome, and grow into higher forms. Humans are beings who constantly transcend themselves, and it is in this very process that suffering arises. To create something new, one must break the existing, stable state. To change oneself, one must clash with the previous self. Thus, suffering is not a mere sign of failure, but a symptom of transformation and becoming. Nietzsche noted that artists, philosophers, and great individuals mostly experienced deep internal suffering. He believed that the creative spirit always battles the chaos within to give birth to new values. His famous expression, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star," symbolizes this very thought. Nietzsche believed that when humans only try to avoid suffering, they become increasingly diminished. He argued that modern society excessively pursues comfort and safety. A society that seeks to eliminate danger and trials makes humans weak and eventually loses the intensity of life itself. He insisted that education and culture should also make humans stronger, rather than making them comfortable. The strength Nietzsche spoke of is not mere physical power or violence, but the spiritual ability to endure one's destiny and take responsibility for one's entire life. He believed that a truly strong human does not resent suffering, but accepts it as a part of their life. This attitude is most clearly seen in Nietzsche's concept of Amor Fati, love of fate. Amor Fati is the attitude of loving everything that has happened in one's life. It is the affirmation of one's entire life, saying, "This was my life," including not only good memories or happy moments, but also failures, wounds, illnesses, and despair. Nietzsche thought that a human truly affirms life only when they can completely love their destiny. His doctrine of the eternal recurrence also demonstrates a unique attitude towards suffering. Eternal recurrence is a thought experiment, assuming that the current life repeats identically and infinitely. Nietzsche asks, "If you had to repeat this moment of your life endlessly, could you accept it?" For most, this would feel like a terrible curse. However, Nietzsche believed that a human who deeply affirms life must be able to desire their entire life again, even including the suffering. This is not mere resignation, but the most extreme affirmation of total existence. He did not try to remove suffering from life, but rather sought to embrace it. Nietzsche himself lived through extreme physical and mental suffering. He suffered from chronic headaches, deteriorating vision, and physical weakness, and was often isolated in his human relationships. Yet, he did not consider his suffering a mere misfortune. Rather, he believed that illness and pain make a human think more deeply. Nietzsche saw that while healthy people take life too much for granted, those who have suffered gain a sharper insight into existence. He called his philosophy philosophizing with a hammer, meaning it was a philosophy intended to destroy existing values and idols and create new ones. This destruction also entails suffering, but Nietzsche believed that within that very suffering, new human possibilities open up. Nietzsche also took a unique stance on compassion. He warned that unconditional compassion could make humans weak. He argued that excessive pity carries the risk of weakening the power to overcome suffering and keeping humans trapped in a victim mentality. He believed that humans are not beings to be merely comforted, but beings who must overcome themselves. However, this does not mean being indifferent to the suffering of others. What Nietzsche criticized was a form of compassion that fixes humans as eternally weak beings. He placed more importance on relationships that awaken the power and potential within a person. Ultimately, for Nietzsche, suffering was not a negative byproduct of life, but a creative force pushing humans toward a higher stage, criticizing a civilization that holds happiness without suffering as the highest value. He argued that humans form themselves and transcend their limits through trials. His philosophy does not provide a safe consolation for humanity. Instead, it demands that one stare directly at the tragedy and cruelty of life. Yet at the same time, he believed that even in such a reality, humans could love life, nevertheless. Nietzsche's philosophy of suffering does not hide the darkness of human existence, but can be called a philosophy of radical affirmation that seeks to discover the possibility of a stronger and more creative life within that very darkness.